you hear some of this a couple of years ago with Greg Oden. Yeah, I would have taken Kevin Durant. Well, maybe, maybe not. But I know nobody would have taken Jordan ahead of Akeem. So, and the Bulls were dumping games that season. Houston dumped more. Everybody did, and that led to the lottery the next year. That it was so egregious because everybody's trying to get to Akeem. Because the ethic then is get two big guys. They had Samson, and so there was nothing to. I know Akeem put in his book about, they wanted it, and yeah, in retrospect, hindsight, you'd say, yeah, Jordan and Akeem, which they could have had if they trade Ralph
They could have.
Sampson.
Yeah.
Portland could have picked. But I had talked to Bill Fitch, Houston, Portland. It never even came up. It was never discussed. Houston was taking Akeem and they were putting him with Ralph Sampson. And even though you don't remember Ralph Sampson much, before his knee injury, he was really good. I mean, he's like Wembanyama. He's 7'4", shooting from outside, long. And so the notion, and they did get to the finals like in '86. So, it wasn't completely wrong. So anyway, so we got this, they said, well, he's good, he's good, but he's a guard and he's averaged 17 points and can't shoot. And so the editor says, well, why don't you go out and spend the day with this guy, write a story, thing. He shows up. I go out to he was living in a townhouse then. Go out to meet him, to spend the day, just to write rookies in Chicago day in the life thing. So, I end up like on the ground floor with this guy the minute he kind of walks into Chicago. So that's, just complete luck, good, luck. And then I get on the beat full time. And so now I'm traveling with him, I'm watching. And so to me, what mostly stands out is, the rise toward the championship. These incredible games against the Pistons, a lot of which were losses. 6 game, it was a pattern of it. They lost in 5 games to him in the playoffs, then 6, then 7 before they finally got over. And then he'd have these great shootouts with Isaiah Thomas, who was a Chicago native. He was the most popular guy in Chicago. He'd come back and was celebrated. Won title at IU, and he'd always come back home and do all sorts of. Was the most celebrated. And Jordan comes down, and Jordan, and Isaiah's like the enemy. He's in Detroit, the bad boys, and they're beating Jordan up. And so he'd have these incredible games against Isaiah with a goal. I remember one, it was in the Pistons when they were still playing in the football maniac. It was like an overtime game. Isaiah had like 45. Jordan had 56 or something. In these special regular season games, they're not mentioned. And, you see all these lists of the greatest games ever, the greatest highlight, and none of these make those. But these were games that, you were just transfixed by watching these guys go at each other and watching these two teams, on their rise. The Pistons trying to finally get by Boston, the Bulls starting to grow up and, need to get by Detroit. And so watching that over 4, 5, 6 years. And, I joke about is nobody's taking that trip into Detroit more than me. That afternoon flight, I'd land at 3:00 and make my way up 75 with all the auto workers to the arena. And, back then you were playing the other team 6 times. And then the playoff series every year. And so there was just memorable game after memorable game, with these two contrasting teams, because you had a physical, slower, ugly, dirty Pistons against this and Grant, probably the 3 best defenders at their position in the league at the time, athletic, up tempo, fun to watch, being ground down by these, tough, physical, miserable, big guys. So you had
grinders.
This incredible, clash of styles and clash of great personalities with Isaiah and Michael. And then also, it always it doesn't ever get mentioned, but the best, I wouldn't call it rivalry game, but the best matchups games I ever saw were Jordan and Dominique Wilkins. Because now, players don't want to play other great players. They don't want to be embarrassed. You'll see they'll take off. Back then in the 80s, these guys welcomed that. And Michael and Dominique, who was a fabulous athlete and a terrific player and very underrated, uh, would build up toward these. They'd be in the media talking about, I circled a date, I'm coming to Chicago, I'm going to drop 50 on them. And they would go back and forth, dunking on each other, challenging each other all game long. Super shootouts that, frankly, the stars of today run away from. They don't want to be part of, because you get
Yep.
on Twitter or whatever, and people say, "Oh, you got dunked on," and this and that. And there was these guys relished those ends. They looked forward to it. They circled it. They talked to the media about it. They say, Dominique's coming to town, and that's going to be a show. And they're kind of building up the NBA at the time too, because the NBA needed to be sold. It wasn't like it is now. So those things, the Michael Dominique matchups were some of the greatest. They talk about the Bird, the famous Bird semifinals playoff thing with Dominique, where I think Dominique had 47, and that second round shootout. That happened 6 times a year with Jordan and Dominique. It happened every season. Every game they played was like that. And so those things were the most fun, even though they don't make any of the lists.
Yeah, it's true. It is true.
Now, mentioning obviously the battles with the Pistons, I think back to, I forget what year it was, but one of the postseason games where Scotty gets taken out by Mahorn or Lambier down low, and it's a foul. He's got to shoot free throws, presumably, and he's not getting up. And the referee literally pulls him off the floor so someone else can shoot free throws. Like, the ref is dragging Pippen away, and it's just like, I mean, you would never see something like that nowadays, which
Yeah,
shows you
there
how
was one
physical.
in 91 when they won, when Rodman, rode him into the stands, just absolutely, smashed him. And I think he may have had a concussion coming out of there. Um, and then they actually did get a concussion. I think it was the 89 playoff series with Detroit, where in the first minute of the game, Lambier hit him in the head, and he
Yeah, I
wasn't
think
able
that's
to
what I
finish
was.
the
Yeah,
game. Yeah, and that was
yeah.
he went out. Right, he took him out. And actually, Jordan, it doesn't get mentioned, but Jordan was mad at Pippen,
Yeah.
because typical Michael, well, so what if you got a sucking chest wound and your arm is falling off? Get in the game.
Yeah.
It's always funny, load management, it was just, obviously everybody played back then. But Jordan would go into the trainer's room all the time before practice, and guys were getting treatment, and he would just shut it down. Everybody out on the floor. None of this bullshit about taping up and rub downs. Get out there. And this is
Don't be
practice.
soft.
Like
Yeah, don't
Iverson
be
would say.
soft.
That was just practice.
Yeah.
And that was the ethic of that. And so, yeah, he didn't, and that was part of the Jordan rules thing. He didn't have patience for not playing. You look at his career games played numbers. It's just extraordinary. He never missed the game. He never not played. It was a big story. I remember in the Doug's last season, 88, 89. He probably could have played in that game. He took one game off that season, but he was mad at Doug, and he was mad at the team, and he didn't go to Boston, and they got blown out, and they came back, and Doug made a switch and gave him the ball, and that's when he had like 9 triple doubles in 10 games, because everybody was saying, well, you don't make anybody better, you can't get a triple double. Triple double, what's the big deal about that? I can do that.
Watch and
So
see. Yeah.
put a point guard, got 9 triple doubles in the next 10 games. So it's like,
Unbelievable.
he had a big rivalry with Magic. He really disliked Magic, because, and they subsequently became great friends. But part of it was competitive, but part of it was also they held him up to Magic. Said that, yeah, you're a better athlete, you're a better scorer, but Magic, he makes players better. He's a winner, you're not a winner. And so he would drive him nuts about that. And so they would always talk about the triple doubles. So he said, triple doubles, what's the big deal? I can do that anytime I feel like it. So yeah, and he took that game off. They lost. He came back, was point guard the rest of the season, and actually went into the playoffs. I think that was the playoff year where they beat Cleveland. Yeah, they beat Cleveland. His shot, and then they beat the Knicks. They upset the Knicks, cost Pitino his job. He got run out
Yep,
after that.
Patino.
The
Yep.
Knicks won the division, and then they get up 2-1 on Cleveland, on Detroit. You know, who end up winning the title or going to the finals, whatever. I guess they went to the finals that year. No, they won the
Yeah.
title that year. But he was just so exhausted by then, you know, that not only the Jordan rules defense, but he's running points, he's scoring 30, he's doing everything. And by the time they got it to that point in the playoffs, he you know, it just had it. And the Pistons won that last 3 in a row.
It's incredible. Incredible.
Sam, you've also publicly have said that you feel like Jordan may have fabricated some aspects of The Last Dance. I know
Yeah.
that you've mentioned before
Did.
about it, like in '99, he never planned to come back, and he kind of embellished that whole situation. Is there anything else that you would say, if you want to share, that wasn't true from The Last Dance?
Yeah, I always sort of joke that you know, at Last Dance, and it was great, and it showed Jordan as he is. I thought, you know, it was a real, you know, window into how he is, how he behaves, and I thought that was the fun for it, you know, and that's why I liked his Hall of Fame speech, where everybody was horrified that he was calling out everybody and saying, you know, Leroy Smith, you beat me out for the team, you know, and Jeff Van Gundy, you know, and so anyway, and I thought, yeah, that's Jordan, you know, that's what he's like, you know, don't get upset, that's who he is. Um, you know, but he's, you know, he's a great dramatist too. Too, I sort of joke that it's like it was like a lot of TV movies. It was based on a true story, you know, and so they always say in a lot of those TV movies that you see. But yeah, you know, and it sounded good to say that they should have given us another chance, you know, and I know that's become the, you know, sort of the narrative, you know, that, you know, the Bulls broke it up, and they did not break it. Jordan broke it up. First of all, nobody could break it up other than Michael Jordan. You know, Phil Jackson was leaving even before that season started. You know, Phil had always talked about 7 years is the run you would have with a team. That a coach, the players tune you out after 7 years. So now he had gone 9, because after 7 years was the first title. It was '96. And had they not won that year, you know, when Michael came back and they had the great run, Phil was retiring, you know, sabbatical. He was taking a step away because he had this in his mind. And he'd always had this from the CBA and all that. A coach, you know, has a window with a team. And after 7 years, no matter how great you are, they're tuning you out. You know, Red Auerbach had that similar run, Pat Riley, whatever. And so, but then, so they win in '96, and the players literally come to his house at the end of the season. Ron Harper and a couple of other guys, please come back. You know, all right, I'll come back one more season. So he comes back one more season, and then the end of the next season, it's little known, little remembered, but and the NBA changed the rules about this. He didn't have a contract going into '97, '98, so the Bulls let him do interviews with other teams. He interviewed with the Magic. So before, in the summer, before he re-signed for the '97, '98 season, you know, he was doing interviews, coaching interviews with other teams. And so, you know, that's not allowed. So the NBA since shut that down. So anyway, he comes to a reluctant agreement with the owner. He doesn't want to deal with Jerry Krause anymore. And Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner, flies up to Montana, sits down with Phil, and Phil says, okay, you know, I'll come back one more season, but that's really it. You know, I'm 2 seasons over. He signs for one more. And okay, so he's coming back. So Phil's gone. They didn't drive him out. The truth was, the owner at that time said, you can sign for as long as you want. But Phil says, not only, you know, I'm done with this team, but anyway, actually, they told him, they said, well, what if it's, you know, in a couple of years, an expansion team, you can start over again. No, I'm not doing